and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum, and I'm tired.
Oh, buck up. I'm Ann Northrup. Hi.
Hi. Well, we are going to give you our take on the elections that do leave the potential for progress on LGBTQ rights in question. But there will be more LGBTQ representatives in Washington and in state houses. And our guest is Congress Member-Elect Ritchie Torres of the Bronx, the first Afro-Latinx LGBTQ member of the U.S. House and one of two Black gay men elected to Congress on Tuesday.
The elections, however, were not the only thing going on this week. This morning, as we tape on Wednesday and come to you live on Facebook on Wednesday, the U.S. Supreme Court heard the Philadelphia case about whether people can use religious excuses to discriminate against LGBTQ people and others.
I listened to the arguments, but gay Black Lives Matter activist DeRay McKesson got a favorable ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's sort of intermediate good news. We lost several important people this week. Community leaders David Scondras in Massachusetts, Dvorah Stoll in New York, and the legendary Betty Dodson, pioneer for female self-pleasure.
Taiwan, which has gotten the coronavirus under control, it can be done, rewarded themselves with a big LGBTQ pride celebration outside with lots of people around.
And Manila in the Philippines enacted civil rights protections for LGBTQ people, making it, I think, the third city in the Philippines to do so.
Canada banned conversion therapy.
And the Vatican is throwing cold water on the Pope's alleged embrace of gay couples.
Yeah. All right. How you feeling?
Well, I felt really awful last night, Tuesday night, election night, when all the horrible news was pouring in about all the states going for Trump. Some people had thought Biden was going to just sweep this. And when Trump kept winning state after state, it got very depressing and very scary. But by the end of the evening and by the time, and as I woke up intermittently during the night, it became clear that Biden actually looked like he's headed for the presidency, and that made me feel a lot better. Yes. The Senate, of course, is the terrible news. And Susan Collins getting realected, man, that is disgusting.
Now we're going to have to depend on her for votes against judges. Good luck with that. It never worked in the past. It never worked in the past. Here's what I woke up feeling. I mean, I thought, well, everybody who loved Trump voted for him the last time, and he didn't expand his base. He intensified it, and he made it more toxic. But here is somebody for 4 years who told, this is not completely new, who tells 15 lies a day. But it turns out people want to be lied to, especially about the virus. They don't want to believe in it, and they're not taking the necessary actions to stop it. And they just want to believe he's going to come up with a miracle cure and it's not serious and we've rounded the corner. But that is just completely magical thinking.
Well, I just read a little voter analysis that surveys of people and what their top issues were in voting. And more than a third of people said their top issue was the economy. And less than 1 out of 5 said the virus was their top issue, even though the news media has been telling us all along that, everybody's going to vote about the virus. No.
But if you don't solve the virus problem, you can't heal the economy.
Look, Trump has been given illegitimate credit for good economic news for 4 years. He came into a situation where Obama had dragged the economy out of a ditch that George Bush left it in, saved the country basically economically, and put it back on its feet. And all Trump had to do was coast on that. And frankly, you look at the numbers, and he has not done as well on the economy as Obama did. So the fact that he gets credit for it is insane.
Well, something I noticed from the exit polls now, the New York Times does a national survey of voters, and they've sometimes said that the LGBT vote is about 5%. Now they're saying it's 7%, but I was shocked by this figure. They are saying it went for Biden, but only 61 to 28. That doubles the percentage that Trump got in 2016. And that is extremely disturbing to me. We're helping a lot of right-wing people come out of the closet. We didn't mean to do that with this show, but that's one of the unintended consequences.
Well, I mean, that's just one of the reasons that Trump did as well as he did this week. Thank God, not well enough, but
much worse with suburban people. Terrible with women. Maybe a little better with black men, or not black women. But and of course, then there's all those Latinos down in Florida who,
Well, it is very much a male-female divide. So you won't mind if I just ask you all to disappear.
All right. By the way, Trump closed down his campaign by talking about firing Fauci after the election, which is completely imbecilic. If you might do it, why say that, since it's so controversial? But I guess it got him a few votes. Even Birx is now calling for more aggressive action on the thing. And Donald Trump Jr. said at a Michigan rally that Democrats are more concerned about 9,276 genders than they are about you. I can't list them all. I don't have even the time, and they don't even know which ones they are. I mean, and they used anti-trans robocalls in swing states heavily to try to sink Biden. A million transphobic calls.
This election had reportedly the most homophobic and transphobic ads ever in any election, and more voter suppression. The mail slowdowns are still being reported. Lots of undelivered mail in swing states, in Georgia, in North Carolina, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. And the mail, only about 60% of the mail got delivered. Yes. They
did all that sabotage out in the open. And
now that's going to court, because those, particularly in North Carolina and Georgia, those votes could make a difference in the election results. And we're still hoping for a Senate win in North Carolina, maybe. And I guess the Senate races in Georgia are what they are at the moment. But this, as you say, overt voter suppression. And then you have things like this last weekend, the MAGA teams, the Proud Boys, the right-wingers with all their Trump flags, were running caravans around the New York area and charging all over, blocking traffic, blocking bridges, doing all this stuff with the complete cooperation of the New York Police Department.
I saw the police on our corner here.
Well, what happened was that the Proud Boys caravan was in, Brooklyn or Queens or something, and they were planning to head for Manhattan, and the cops said to them, "Oh, don't go there because there are Antifa types there and Black Lives Matter. So you just go around that and go upstate a little, and we'll take care of them." And then the progressives are marching in Manhattan. There are about 100 of them. They gather in Madison Square Park. They walk west to try to intercept the MAGA caravan, which is not there. So then they turn around and they're coming east to disperse. And the cops surround them, beat them, and arrest 10 of them.
Well, look, the passion for fascism is strong in this country. And, we would not have these political problems. And again, I'm not trying to sound naive, but, 1789, they came up with electoral college. We've, always known it was a jerry-rigged system. People have to overturn this. We can't go on like this, electing minority presidents. We may not this time, we probably will not this time, but it always stands to be the possibility. And the Senate is wholly unfair. So, but we can't go on like this. I mean, countries that have houses of lords who were just appointed by heredity, have more credibility than our Senate.
Well, we have a new QAnon member of Congress that Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia got elected.
And Q does not stand for queer.
Does not, although we could work on that. I don't know whether the QAnon rep in Western Colorado got elected. I haven't looked that one up. But Marjorie Taylor Greene will be a member of Congress, which should be, I want to say, entertaining. I can only be grateful she's in the minority in the House, and maybe she can drive some moderate Republicans over to
let's take a pause and give them some good news. What do you think?
We're ready. We've just been revving up for the good news. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You introduce them.
All right. Several things. Well, first, in no particular order, we want to
bring our guest on now and let them hear from him, or you want to go through all these other?
No, I think we ought to go through some of these at least. We won a couple of important ballot initiatives. In Nevada, we did finally repeal the anti-same-sex marriage law. That's off the books. And in Washington State, we passed comprehensive sex education in the schools. Those are both two major things.
In Delaware, Sarah McBride is the first out transgender state senator in the country.
And but she follows in the footsteps of Danica Rome, who in Virginia was the first trans person elected to a state legislature. But we have also added in Kansas, in the House in Kansas, Native American trans woman Stephanie Byers elected to the Kansas State House. And in Vermont, Taylor Small, trans woman, elected to the House in Vermont.
And we're going to have a lot of these, and you can eventually go to victoryfund.org and you can read about all the people who've been elected. But impressed out there in Brooklyn, Jabari Brisport was elected to the state Senate from Prospect Heights, Brooklyn, an out gay African-American man.
But you're right that we are bearing the lead here. The two big, huge wins are two new members of the U.S. Congress from New York. Ritchie Torres from the Bronx, African-American and Latinx out gay man, and Mondaire Jones from the New York suburbs, Black gay man elected to Congress. And this morning we spoke to Ritchie Torres, and we would like to share that conversation with you. He is a terrific new star.
And we are honored to welcome Ritchie Torres, the Congress Member-Elect from the 15th District in the Bronx. Welcome.
Yay!
Thank you.
All right, Ritchie, you're very famous for saying, I would not be here today if it were not for my mother. How did she react to this? What kind of conversation did you have?
My mother's my greatest supporter. When I was at the lowest point in my life, in moments when I was struggling with depression or abusing substances or thought of taking my own life, the one person who was there for me at every turn was my mother. I would not be here were it not for her unconditional love. She raised me in public housing, and it's her love that brought me to the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. So this moment belongs as much to my mother as it does to me.
Well, there's a lot more that brought you to this moment, too. You may be a little tired of hearing yourself described as the out gay, Black, Afro-Latinx congressman from the Bronx now, but you're going to hear a lot more of that. But you took on quite a task in challenging Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr. in the primary a few months ago. A lot of people thought that was an impossible task, especially since you originally had a lot of opponents. What made you get into this race and made you think you could win this?
I had a sense that this was a change election and that I could emerge as a change candidate. And for too long, Bronx politics was dominated by the likes of Ruben Diaz Sr., who was thought to be unbeatable.
Yeah.
And he's essentially a Trump Republican masquerading as a Democrat. In fact, over the weekend, he held a rally for Donald Trump. He announced on Twitter that he had voted for Donald Trump. And the thought of a Trump Republican representing the most Democratic district in America would constitute a profound tragedy for the progressive movement, for the LGBTQ movement, and for the Democratic Party. And look, I want to raise that very few people thought I could win. Most people thought that a young gay man had no fighting chance of defeating an established brand name like Ruben Diaz Sr. in the South Bronx, where more than half the voters are at or above the age of 55, and many of them are church-going. But I thought that people were underestimating how far our society had come, the seismic shift in attitudes. And not only did we win, but in Ruben Diaz Sr.'s own backyard, among absentee voters, which was about half the electorate, I won 43% of the vote in an 11-person race, and I defeated Ruben Diaz Sr. by a margin of 4-1, which sent him into retirement, which is exactly where he belongs.
He didn't even come in second. And we should say that you've been a council member on the New York City Council for a long time. But that leads me to a question, what you raised. What's the secret to reaching churchgoers when you're a gay candidate? Help our viewers.
Here's my theory. I've always thought even religious people of color are quite different from white evangelicals. Right? White evangelicals, particularly in the South, tend to be culture warriors, tend to vote on issues like abortion and marriage and all the rest. Whereas people in the South Bronx, even those with deeply held religious convictions, vote on bread and butter issues like health and housing, schools and jobs. And I was the candidate who spoke most powerfully to those issues through the prism of my lived experiences. But I was crystal clear that my LGBTQ identity is part of my lived experience. It's part of my identity. And I was as open about my LGBTQ identity as I was about every aspect of my lived experience. So I thought the voters appreciated my youth and my energy and my authenticity. And for them, it represented a new generation of leadership. And keep in mind, I'm succeeding Jose Serrano, who's been in office for 30 years, and he's been a progressive icon. When he entered Congress in 1990, I was only 2 years old, probably watching the Rugrats. And today, I'm about to become a United States congressman, so it represents a genuine passing of the torch.
Is that your phone ringing?
Is that yes, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Hey, it's live TV. Anything can happen. But please don't disappear.
We lost your picture there.
Oh, I'm sure you'll come back. Well, Ritchie, can you hear us still?
I think you punched a button. Well, the busy life of a Congress member-elect.
Okay, I don't see him here, but let's wait.
This is
oh, there you go.
life under Zoom. I apologize.
Okay. And we should say, before Ann answers another question, you are 32 years old.
I am 32. Yeah.
Okay.
So now you're headed for Congress, a nest of vipers, which may be the only place more difficult than negotiating the New York City Council. You do have a long history in housing issues and other issues you named. What are you looking forward to in Congress, diving into and getting involved with?
Yeah, so I hope to be a champion of affordable housing on the national stage, just like I've been a champion of affordable housing in the city council. The Democratic Party should be dedicated to the proposition that every person deserves safe, decent, affordable housing. We need to reinvest in public housing, which has been so savagely starved of federal funding that it has $40 billion worth of capital needs. I was one of those tenants who was living in conditions of mold and mildew, leaks and lead, without reliable heat and hot water in the winter. We have to expand Section 8 vouchers so that families in need pay no more than 30% of their income toward their rent. There are families who are living on the verge of eviction and displacement because of COVID-19, and the federal government has to provide emergency rental assistance. None of us, including myself, can succeed in life without stable housing. I would not be where I am today were it not for affordable housing and the stability it gave me and my family. And I want that same stability for the people I'm going to represent in the South Bronx.
And, given we don't know exactly what you're walking into, we still have a House majority, may have lost a couple of seats. We don't know about the Senate. We don't even know about the president, although we're hopeful. So how do you operate in that environment? I guess you have to wait to see how everything shakes out.
The ability to affect change depends on who's in the presidency and who's in the Senate. So it's impossible to answer the question in the abstract. My suspicion is that Biden is well positioned to win the presidency because there are millions of mail-in ballots that have yet to be counted in Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. So Biden has a much clearer path to 270 than Donald Trump. But make no mistake, the results were disappointing. The Republicans will continue to control the Senate and therefore continue to wield control over Supreme Court appointments. I would submit to you the greatest threat to LGBTQ equality comes from right-wing judicial activism. And the Democratic Party was hoping to expand our majority in the House. Quite the contrary. We lost several seats, including in the New York State congressional delegation. So we might win the presidency, but the overall results were mixed. This was not the repudiation of Donald Trump and Trumpism that all of us were hoping for and predicting.
Have you had any contact with Nancy Pelosi or the House leadership or any of your future colleagues about your place in the House?
I have. I actually met with Speaker Pelosi a few weeks ago to speak about the needs in my district. I've been in conversations with colleagues with the Equality Caucus, the LGBTQ caucus in Congress. Our highest legislative priority is to pass the Equality Act, which would amend the Civil Rights Act to protect the LGBTQ community from discrimination in matters of housing, employment, and public accommodation. But if Republicans control the Senate, then the Senate will continue to be a graveyard for progressive policymaking.
Yeah.
You've also been elected at the same time, it looks like, with Mondaire Jones, just to the north of you there, out gay black man. Have you talked to him about teaming up around some issues?
Mondaire is my brother. There's no one in the class of incoming members with whom I have a closer relationship and friendship than Mondaire Jones. So collaboration will come naturally to us. And both of us are trailblazers. A wise person once said that if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're probably going to be on the menu. And with Mondaire Jones and myself, the LGBTQ community, and in particular LGBTQ people of color, will have a powerful seat in the halls of Congress.
Well, we are thrilled with your victory, eager to see you at work in Washington, although we don't envy you having to be there, and hope that you will come back and join us frequently to report to our audience and enlist them as helpers in whatever you're doing.
I look forward to coming back without the interruption of my cell phone. So,
thank you, Congress Member-Elect.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Why can't people like that be president?
Well, wait a few years, maybe we'll see. But to follow up on a couple of things he said, and while we were running that interview that we recorded a couple hours ago, Wisconsin has now officially fallen into the Biden column. That means that if Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona go to Biden, all of which are highly likely, he gets to 270.
Right.
And that means Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina would be icing on the cake, but are not necessary.
And that, of course, would be the narrowest possible wins in the Electoral College, but he's got a big, large majority in the nation, over 50% of the vote.
Well, he has a 3 million vote lead at the moment in the popular vote, which could grow. Sorry to report that John Hoadley lost his bid for Congress in Michigan. Gina Ortiz-Jones also lost her second attempt at Congress in Texas. Both are terrific candidates. Hope they'll go on to other things.
On the positive side, in Florida, the first outstate senator, Chevron Jones, In Florida, Michelle Rayner, the first Black out LGBT state representative. And Georgia, Kim Jackson.
Chevron also Black, so that's 2 Black LGBT people going to the, well, Chevron was already in the House. He moves up to the Senate. Michelle joins the House. Yeah, go ahead, Georgia.
And what about Stephanie Bryers in Kansas?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I may have talked over you. Kim Jackson, Black lesbian in Georgia, first LGBT person in the state legislature, I think.
And did we talk about Stephanie Bryers in Kansas in the House?
Yes, we mentioned her in the list of trans people elected.
And in Vermont, a non-binary candidate, Joshua Query, who was already in the state legislature but came out before this election, was reelected. And in Hawaii, Adrian Tan, elected to the state house, the only out LGBTQ official in Hawaii. I find that hard to believe, but there it is in black and white.
Update on previously mentioned candidate. Charmaine McGuffey in Ohio has won the position of sheriff of Hamilton County. We got a lot of positive comment about her when we ran a video of her, little campaign video a couple of weeks ago. In Oklahoma, I have to say, this knocks me out. In Oklahoma, Mauree Turner, a non-binary Muslim, has been elected to the state legislature in Oklahoma. Amazing. The country is changing here and there. In Tennessee, 2 out gay people elected to the state legislature. A Black gay man, Tory Harris, who Anise Parker mentioned when she was with us last week or the week before, and a Republican, the one Republican gay man I've found so far, Eddie Manis, a white guy, also elected to the legislature, but seems to be, as an out gay man, very pro-gay. We'll see what he has up his sleeve. David Ortiz, elected in Colorado, first out bisexual to the Colorado legislature, and an out lesbian, Ann Johnson, elected in Texas to the state legislature, and in Missouri, Greg Razor, elected to the state Senate, out gay man.
And again, you can look for all these results at victoryfund.org.
They endorsed about 300 candidates across the country. That's not all the LGBTQ candidates, but it's a hefty majority of them, and they have the results on those elections by state, name, position, race, gender, win and loss, all very interesting. And by the way, you know, we mentioned last week that the Philadelphia Gay News had done an interview with Joe Biden about issues, and I just wanted to follow up with what he specifically said. He wants to pass
the questionnaire.
He wants to pass the Equality Act in 100 days. Well, he's going to have to buy off a few Republican senators to do that, but I'm in favor of that.
But the big issue is not that there aren't a couple of Republicans who would vote for it. Would Mitch McConnell allow it to the floor?
Well, I am very curious to see whether Mitch McConnell, with Trump gone, at the start of a 4 years of a Democratic administration, will he be more willing to horse trade, or is
you kidding?
Is he going to stonewall for 4 years? That's painful.
I saw Ted Cruz say if Hillary Clinton had gotten elected and we had a Republican Senate, we weren't going to confirm any of her judges for 4 years.
Well, there has to be some punishment enacted. But Biden says he will prioritize LGBT rights internationally, is a booster of senior LGBT housing, wants to help trans people. That may fix us with the military.
There's a lot he can do.
Excuse me?
There is a lot he can do.
Yes, and he can reverse a lot of the horrible things that Trump did with executive actions. And he also is against this kind of religious discrimination, which I think we should now turn to and talk about.
All right. So we've been telling you about this case. We had James Essex from the ACLU on. This is Catholic Social Services in Philadelphia wants the right in foster care not to have to consider gay couples who want to be parents in foster care.
And the important details here are that they have a contract with the city of Philadelphia, which pays them to run foster and adoption care services. But the city of Philadelphia has a non-discrimination law that protects against LGBTQ discrimination.
Their argument is, oh, we'll refer you to one of the 29 agencies that'll deal with the gays. It would violate our religious freedom to have to talk to them. I don't think that's in the Bible.
But this, because we have this freedom of religion clause in the Constitution, this is the ultimate dilemma, is whose rights take priority. And this is what the Supreme Court has to sort out. And you listened to the arguments today, so tell me what happened.
Forget about Alito, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. They were openly hostile. Kagan and Breyer and Sotomayor were sympathetic and to our side. Roberts, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett asked intelligent questions, not in a hostile fashion, because they're trying to work through this. I mean, you can imagine what her position is on this, coming from where she does. She's the one who asked, what if a religious organization didn't want to deal with interracial couples? Because their religion does not believe in interracial marriage. Oh, and then the lawyers for Catholic Social Services said, well, Loving v. Virginia settled that. And she said, well, what about a Obergefell?
Yeah.
But that's different. Oh, and then there was a lot of discussion about, well, how is it different? Oh, but we've always given heightened scrutiny to this. And then here's the thing. Catholic Social Services lawyers kept saying, but City of Philadelphia allows discrimination on the basis of disability and race. What do they mean by that? You don't place a kid in a home where the disabled people are incapable of taking care of that kid. That's all. And in terms of race, there is some preference given to, let's have black kids with black families if we can, because there's an issue there. That is the only thing, but they kept repeating it.
Cultural competence, we call it.
They kept repeating it. Neil Katyal, you've seen him on television 1,000 times, was the Philadelphia's attorney defending this. He says, look, we're not hostile to Catholic Social Services. We give them $26 million in contracts. We don't even discriminate against them in the final processes of adoption and foster care. Suppose the kid is Catholic and wants to be in a Catholic home, go to Catholic Social Services. They do that, okay? But we're talking about a service that they're supposed to provide. So here's the thing. He said the big issue here, and the court seemed to understand it, is stigma. You are stigmatizing gay parents and saying, you don't belong in the system, at least as far as we're concerned. And that's bad for the parents, and it's bad for LGBT youth. That was raised by even people like Gorsuch, So I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, I think it was Amy Coney Barrett. Now, her buddy Scalia wrote the decision called Smith, which said, look, if it's a generally applicable law, you can't use religion as an excuse. So she said, can we uphold Smith and rule for you? And that got into a whole thing. So they're going to be looking for something here. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go.
And the arguments, in fact, went on twice as long as they were scheduled. Their arguments in the Supreme Court are always scheduled for 1 hour for each case. And these went on for 2 hours. I know because I was on hold waiting for the ACLU's press conference to convene after the arguments.
Okay.
So I think it's very, very complex. And there is absolutely no predicting what's going to happen here. It's scary.
It is.
But yes, I think when you try to compare it to things like race or disability, you're talking about decisions being made in a positive way around race and disability and whatever. And with this, what would distinguish it is that stigma, is the negative connotation you're placing on LGBTQ parents.
I will make no predictions about how the outcome of the case.
No, but we can report on another Supreme Court case having to do with another former guest of ours, DeRay McKesson, who you may remember being here because he was involved in a lot of the
Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and post George Floyd demos, and he was very involved in Ferguson, Missouri, over that case. So he led some demos in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when Alton Sterling was murdered by the cops. And in one of those demos, somebody somewhere threw a rock and hit a cop, and the cop was injured. And so the cop wants to sue DeRay McKesson as the leader of the demo and hold him responsible for his injuries. And the Supreme Court said, no, you have not proved that. We're not going to let that happen. You're going to have to go back to the lower courts and re-argue some of this.
Well, they want an analysis of whether Louisiana state law allows for such a claim.
Yeah, so they were not immediately willing to condemn DeRay. So I'm sure he's not enjoying having to go through various rounds of this.
Meanwhile, the real victims of violence continue to be trans women of color. Mm-hmm. One was killed in Memphis, the 34th such murder that we know about this year. Angel Unique, 25 years old, a licensed cosmetologist, killed on October 25th of a gunshot wound. A vigil was held on October 30th by friends and family.
Beloved by friends and family. We hear so often in these cases that the victims, the women who are being killed, were happy and beloved members of their communities, and somehow they end up shot dead at age 25.
We all need to do a tremendous amount more. I mean, look, we had Ritchie Torres on about housing, about education, about employment. We have to get really serious about these things if we really care about these folks.
Right. Now, we lost a number of other people this week. One prominently comes to mind is David Scondras, age 74. He was the first out gay city councilor in Boston, elected in 83, served 10 years, elected as a Democratic Socialist. Now, he was not the first out gay person elected there. Elaine Noble was elected to the state legislature 10 years before that. Pre-Harvey Milk, by the way.
He was an anti-war activist at Harvard. He and a neighbor got the Fenway Community Health Center going.
He was a big tenant activist. He was an AIDS activist. He was really a fierce outsider who fought hard. And I think that young people today, as I put on my grandma hat, do not fully appreciate all the activism that happened back then in the 70s.
Young people and first-time voters went big for Biden. I will say that. He was obviously supporting human rights, affordable housing, domestic partners' rights. He directed the Boston Human Rights Institute after he was in the council, renamed the Search for a Cure, focusing on AIDS, including in Africa, and helped start India's first AIDS organization. He's survived by his husband and partner of 42 years, Robert Krebs, and 3 sisters.
Died of kidney disease. A real hero, and sorry to read of his death.
All right. Tell us about our friend Dvorah Stoll.
Oh, Dvorah Stoll, as she became more committed to her Judaism and went through midlife bat mitzvahs. She used Dvorah as well as Doris.
And I hope they're showing the wonderful picture you have of her.
Oh, man, there she is leaning out a bus window. 76 years old. Well, she was a terror. She was a joy. She was everything in this neighborhood. And to have her voice silenced is just unbelievable. She was a nonstop activist and what's the word I'm using? She was a fly in the ointment for everything. She had an opinion on everything. She would tell you exactly what she thought about what you were doing. I would be riding my bike down 9th Avenue and I'd hear, Ann, and it was Doris from the sidewalk making me stop and talk to her.
It was a half hour.
She was totally involved with Congregation Beth Sipkat Torah. She was an original fan of the New York Liberty women's basketball team and attended.
Also she was totally supportive of the community. She created a women's networking organization. She was a philanthropist in the community. And of course, one of her big professions was helping people get on Medicare.
And for many years, she published a newsletter called New York City Up and Out, which was an LGBT community newsletter. She was totally in love with her miniature long-haired dachshunds, which she had several of. And she was a very long time and a public advocate of sobriety. She was a member of AA for 34 years. She saw the Yiddish version of Fiddler on the Roof 12 times.
Tradition.
She was amazing.
Whatever the Yiddish word is.
Yeah. She was terrific. I'm sorry she's gone. I'll miss her terrifically in this neighborhood.
And someone who taught us all lessons, but especially women, Betty Dodson, Betty Ann Dodson. She loved that her initials were BAD, 91. Yes. The women's guru of self-pleasure, said a headline in the Times.
Well, we have two pictures. The first is of her in her prime with a vibrator. She taught women how to masturbate, and particularly how to use vibrators, but she taught them about their genital anatomy. She started consciousness raising groups in her living room in the 70s, like David Scondras. She referred to herself as a heterosexual, bisexual lesbian. She was pansexual in her appetite. She wrote many books, including Sex for One, teaching people about masturbation.
She considered what she did social justice work, ending sexual dependence on men. She said masturbation is something that's going to carry you through puberty right to old age.
She made so many women so independent and so happy. And most recently, I mean, she died at 91. It was just in the last couple of years where she did an interview with Gwyneth Paltrow for her Goop stuff and totally embarrassed Gwyneth Paltrow, who was not comfortable talking about masturbation. But Betty was unstoppable. So the other picture we have is of the Magic Wand Marching Band, which we formed one year for the Dyke March and invited Betty to come march with us, which she did, as we carried a big banner we'd made in honor of the Hitachi Magic Wand vibrator.
Did she ever join you in Dildo Park? Down the block from us. Gloria Steinem said that Betty Dodson, her outrageous honesty allowed more women to speak our truths.
Well, she was just irrepressible, like Dvorah and like David Scondras. These people who are irrepressible, who cannot be censored, and who will speak the truth are irreplaceable.
Well, Lambda Legal Defense is trying to stop censorship by the Trump administration. They're challenging that executive order banning diversity training on racism, sexism, and implicit bias. The plaintiffs are LGBT community centers, HIV/AIDS organizations, and advocates for LGBTQ older people like us.
And the LGBTQ caucus in Congress is passing a resolution to support the marriage cases we've won in the Supreme Court in hopes that will symbolically do something. I don't know what, but Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird are now officially engaged after 4 years together. The soccer star and the basketball star.
Right, for the Seattle Storm. Among those congratulating them was Joe Biden, who tweeted, "Love always wins." Well, I don't know about that, Joe, but...
It's not a very original thought. I think he should have tweeted, "It's about time." Okay. Well, we only have about 14 minutes. Should we move on to international news?
Please. Well, speaking of acting, I guess we'll start with
Taiwan.
Taiwan,
love winning in Taiwan.
Taiwan has conquered the virus, and they had
for the moment.
They had the largest in-person post-COVID 2020 Pride celebration in the world, 130,000 in Taipei. They just have had 554 cases of COVID and 7 deaths total. No lockdowns. The last
no COVID cases in 200 days.
So that's not since April. So since same-sex marriage was legalized, by the way, also there in 2019, more than 4,000 same-sex couples have married. The
president tweeted out something very pro-LGBT. So in response, the right wing canceled the national prayer breakfast.
Well, that's
if
true.
only that would happen here.
But the military held a big mass wedding for couples, about 140 couples, I think, and 2 of the couples were lesbian couples.
Very sweet.
The military.
Yeah. Things are not so peaceful and positive in Poland, as you know. So we just thought we'd show you a picture of the massive protests that are taking place there for LGBT people and for abortion rights, which of course are also going down the drain.
100,000 people, women have gotten, with supporters, have gotten into the streets and have stayed there for days and days and days and days and days. I mean, we may be going out today, right, for a protest to preserve the election.
Yeah. Respect the results.
All right.
In Canada, the House of Commons has passed its second reading of a bill not only banning but criminalizing conversion therapy for both minors and adults. Some conservatives want families and religious people exempted. So it's not a final deal yet, but
that's 308 to 7.
Nice.
In New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who is the prime minister, just reelected. Her new deputy prime minister is out-gay Grant Robertson, who has long been her right-hand man, the first gay in that post. Parliament there is 10% LGBTQ, and the new foreign minister is Maori.
A Maori woman with a chin tattoo.
Who is the first woman to hold the post of foreign minister.
It'll be interesting to see her meet with Mike Pompeo in the next 3 months. I know, too delicious. Well, let's go to the Pope then. We don't want to lose this. The Vatican has been issuing statements clarifying the Pope's comments about civil unions. Well, he didn't really say that. They chopped up the interview. He doesn't believe in marriage.
Taken out of context, which is true. You know, they just want to make sure that no one thought the church was open to gay unions. Their doctrinal office ruled in 2003 that the church's support for gay people cannot lead in any way to approval of homosexual behavior or to legal recognition of homosexual unions. That's their position. Yeah,
well, 2 things. One, yes, you and I are under no illusion that the Catholic Church is changing its doctrine or its rules anytime soon. But I think we also have to acknowledge that the news of this distorted, out of context statement had an impact on some people around the world who saw that as supportive.
Didn't come up with the Supreme Court today.
Well, I'm talking about families that reject their kids and things like that. I don't know. I'm just, trying to inject a small.
On the other hand, the Pope, who worships a male god, this week called the virus a lady who must be obeyed.
The Pope said that?
Yes. He hasn't been wearing a mask either.
Oh, my God. Well, in the Philippines.
No, not your God.
In the Philippines, the mayor of Manila, in this lovely picture with his, cabinet or whatever, signed a non-discrimination law that covers sexual orientation and gender identity. I will point out that the person on the left seems to be wearing the flag mask upside down, but that's not a serious sin.
Well, a couple of other places in Philippines do it too, including Quezon City. How do we say it?
Yes.
But in addition to doing the usual jobs and public accommodations coverage, it bans verbal or written insults, including those posted on social media, and any act of discrimination or harassment that demeans dignity and self-respect.
Good luck with that. And maybe that's why we're doing better in Nigeria, where a court dismissed charges of public displays of affection against 47 men who were arrested at a hotel birthday party. The prosecutors didn't show up for the case in court, which is why the court dismissed the charges. Now, technically, the men could be rearrested and recharged if the prosecutors change their minds. I'm not sure why they didn't show up.
Meanwhile, the BBC, Boris Johnson, the prime minister, is trying to get rid of it, basically. But the staff were told not to attend any more protests, such as Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ marches, because it shows partiality. Now, Boris Johnson is trying to defund the BBC on behalf of Rupert Murdoch and himself, because he wants to suppress the truth.
Well, and because he's doing it for Rupert Murdoch, it's because they want to knock out the competitor and make more money.
And Trump's future plans, of course, are to form a new network to be more right-wing than Fox.
Yes, if you thought you weren't going to hear from Trump, I have a bridge to sell you. In Australia, a very moving newspaper column, an op-ed piece by Dan Palmer, a former star rugby player. He was the second rugby player in the world after Gareth Thomas, the Welsh rugby player, to come out. And he talked about his process and how terrified he was of coming out and how much self-loathing he felt, and wants people to understand the full dimensions of this and be more supportive. It was a really well-written piece.
Yeah. Sean Connery, you all saw, died this week at 90. I did not know until I started reading about him that he was part of the first same-sex kiss on the BBC in 1960, something that did not happen again for 27 years on the EastEnders. Connery and Richard Pascoe played brothers in a Jean-Louis play called Colum. Sean's character, Julian, believes his brother is having an affair with his wife, Colum, and he kisses him to find out what makes him such a good lover. No, this was a
little contrived.
This was a big deal.
The French playwrights.
Homosexuality was a criminal offense until 1967, completely.
Well, but good for Sean in 1960 for being willing to take the plunge. Yes. In Peru, the Constitutional Court, by a vote of 4-3, says the National Registry does not have to record a same-sex marriage performed in Mexico. It does not have to be acknowledged in Peru. You know, it was 2017 when the Inter-American Court on Human Rights mandated that 20 Central and South American countries legalize same-sex marriage.
So much for mandates.
Six have done so. 14 to go 3 years later.
Come on, the laws. Where's the law and order crowd when you need them?
Yeah, we call that situational ethics.
Right.
All right, AIDS news. STD rates are down in the COVID crisis, but it's because it's all gone underground and there are no resources for testing and such. So people aren't going for STD tests, or maybe they're having less sex.
Or maybe they're following the advice of Betty Dodson.
Perhaps they are. All right. Other entertainment news.
Well, HBO on November 12th is going to premiere something called Trans Hood, a documentary at 9 o'clock Eastern for trans youth ages 4, 7, 12, and 15. That's who they focus on. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Trans Hood. Yeah.
And there's also a movie called Born to Be that is going to be released about the trans surgery unit at Mount Sinai. You've seen them somewhat in the I Am Jazz series, and now this profiles them, Dr. Jess Ting and his team there. And we'll tell you more about that next week, but that's going to be available November 18th. We'll give you some more details. So, Andy.
It's been a hell of a week.
Well, I realized how tense I've been, how anxious, and how wrapped up in this, because even though I'm not happy about the Senate, I feel some relief to have gotten to this point, at least to have accomplished this. Right. And certainly some relief after last night that it looks like Biden will be able to win the presidency.
Yes. I mean,
although he's no bargain.
Last time I went to the hospital with chest pains after the election, and I was all right. I was just very stressed. I'm not having chest pains this time. But, before I knew all the bad things were going to happen, and they have happened. And what is obviously so just despairing is that so many people approve of that kind of behavior.
Yes. And that's scary because it has gotten much more violent and much more overtly divided in the last 4 years. So what are those Trump people going to do for the next 4 years? It's hard to imagine they will be quiet and lie low. I will say that
they do say that without a leader out there every day, although maybe he will be with this new network, maybe he'll keep having rallies. I don't know. Without a leader, they go a little more underground, and they're just not as overt.
Well, that may be true historically, but we've never had anything like the last 4 years that so energized that right-wing violence and hatred. When you
internets.
Well, when you have the New York City Police Department encouraging the Proud Boys and helping them run their traffic stopping on bridges, you know what happens to us when we stop traffic on bridges. We end up in the pokey. So I am, excuse me?
Well, with your head cracked open.
Yes. So, which is what they did to the totally peaceful 100 people walking down the street this weekend, a block from where we are. So I am concerned about that. I am very nervous about that. I do look forward to hearing. It's going to be like a soft breeze wafting over us to hear better rhetoric from the president, going back to the Obama rhetoric, if you will, and away from the Trump rhetoric.
And people in all the cabinet departments, too.
Yes, there could be wonderful appointments. But Biden has a very mixed record and very mixed instincts. And excuse me?
He has grown, certainly, on our issue.
He has. And during the campaign, he listened.
That's what he's been doing for 47 years, growing. Look, he wasn't my first choice, obviously, but
but we're going to have to. We're going to have to stay on top of Biden and hold him accountable.
I mean, the great work begins, and of course, then we focus, folks, on I hate to say it, on the next elections, because and I really want to hear what happened to the state legislatures, how many of them we won, if any,
Well, with any luck, we don't have to worry about them with the electors for this election. That's theoretically still a possibility, but I don't think a real one.
But I'm worried about the drawing of the lines. 5 seconds. Nice to see you, Ann.
And you, Andy.
Thanks for watching.
See you next week.